What is going on, everybody? Welcome into the Week 9 NFL Power Rankings show here at the midweek after another wild weekend of NFL action. We've got a growing top tier in the NFL. We've got a new team isolated in the bottom tier. It's going to be an exciting week. Please do hit that like button before we get started. It helps me out more than you know if you enjoy the show. It helps push this thing out to other NFL fans just like you, and it's a free and easy way to support my channel, so I really appreciate it. Let's get into it. As I mentioned, a new team all alone, stranded at the bottom in the new bottom tier. Kyler, please come back. We miss you. I tweeted it out. I don't know if I can keep watching this version of this Cardinals team every single week on Game Pass. It was a drag, and I think the Cardinals coaches felt the same way, coming out here on Monday saying, Josh Dobbs, it's been fun, but enough of that. It's either going to be the rookie, see what he can do, or it's going to be Kyler. And I'm ready. Dobbs, just bad. Just bad this week. Bad decisions, inaccurate throws. They've had their fun. They've been scrappy. I think this team has shown some nice stuff, but it's time. It is time. They also currently have sole possession of the number 1 pick, so I thought this was a fitting week to give them their own spot at the bottom. Especially when the Carolina Panthers won this week. It definitely was starting to feel like this was coming as soon as the defense could become more competent, because the offense has actually been pretty good the last couple weeks with Bryce Young and Adam Thielen figuring some stuff out. They just got Austin Corbett back in the lineup too, coming off the ACL injury from last year. So, they've just been able to sustain drives better, which I think has helped the defense for sure. But also, some adjustments coming off the bye week definitely helped this defense play a little faster, tackle a little better, and this team definitely played like a much more competent football team, which I think was built into them. I definitely overrated them coming into the year, but it has been a bit surprising just how bad they've been, considering you have some defensive players like Brian Burns and Derek Brown. So it's a coach I like in Ejiro Evero. So it's been good to see them kind of turn some things around, and it's nice to kind of take a sigh of relief too, because it does not feel like Bryce Young is going to be this bust that seemingly half the football community was ready to write him off as after his first couple months of action. It looks like he's going to weather the storm here in a tough situation and hopefully can have a bright career ahead. And then we've got the Green Bay Packers at number 30. This is just a horrible football team. It's the same mistakes week in, week out. It's horrible receivers this week, especially. 4 drops, 0 for 7 on contested catches, 0 missed tackles forced by the receivers. Just one of the worst days you'll see from a collection of wide receiver talent. Jordan Love actually had his best game on Sunday. Not that he was perfect, but you definitely point to the receivers and the defense allowing these sustained drives. Kirk Cousins just picking these guys apart. Just stupid mistakes, missed field goals, dropping 9 into coverage on a 3rd and 3, and allowing a free release by the tight end for 15 yards on a quick hitting pass. Just over and over again, this is a poorly coached team. They're the youngest team in the NFL. They make mistakes all across the board. They are underratedly horrible. At least they have Rashawn Gary, though, for a long period of time on a huge budget contract for the type of player he is. And then you got the Chicago Bears at number 29, just not all that competitive this week against the Chargers. Just got out-talented. The Tyson Bagent show was fun while it lasted. Hopefully they can get Justin Fields out there soon, just to kind of keep evaluating him. Because, that's kind of all that matters at this point moving forward, is what they're going to do with the quarterback position in this offseason. Then we got the New York Giants at number 28. Let's not talk about the game that was just a complete hilarious disaster on both sides. Tommy DeVito in the game. They basically should have won this game with -6 passing yards, if not for a last-ditch effort from Zach Wilson or a couple missed field goals by Graham Gano. Let's just talk about Dexter Lawrence and how he just might be the most underrated player in the National Football League, which sounds crazy because most people know how good he is, but he's underrated in the sense that he is playing at a Hall of Fame level. He has, to me, entered the sort of elite of the elite that Myles Garrett, Aaron Donald, Chris Jones, TJ Watt, level of defensive player. He's genuinely one of the 10 best players in the National Football League, and I don't think people fully realize it, but he's been that dude now for the better part of about 20 games, and I don't even think Dave Gettleman realized how good Dexter Lawrence was going to be, especially as a pass rusher, when they drafted him in the first round way back when. So at least you got that. And you got an extra second-round pick for Leonard Williams, which I think was a really good return for the New York Giants for where they're at right now for a 29-year-old defensive tackle. But then we're going to have the Minnesota Vikings, who win this week, climbing to 4-4, which does make that Kirk Cousins injury just so much harder to swallow. I mean, they're right there in the mix for that wild card spot in the NFC that's just wide open, and I think they were playing good enough that they were going to get that with Kirk Cousins again in this game against the Packers, following up his performance against the Niners, just showing the anticipation and the level of play that Kirk Cousins was at is the best in his career, in my opinion. So just it is so devastating for the Vikings, for Kirk. Now it's like, what do? The trade deadline's tomorrow. A horrible timing. They have like 36 hours to evaluate free agent quarterbacks, evaluate their team. Where are they at? What do they want to do? Do they want to go for this thing, try to go on a run, or do they just blow this thing? Well, not even blow it up, but just let Jaren Hall kind of tank the season, and maybe they're in a position to take a quarterback next year, right? I don't know. I'm not the biggest Jaren Hall guy. I hope he proves me wrong, but I just don't see them being all that competitive with a fifth-round rookie out of BYU in there that just I don't think is ready to run the offense. So that's really what this fall is about. I'm still impressed by a lot of aspects of this football team, but I just don't think it's going to be enough without the quarterback in there. Then we got the New England Patriots this week, kind of went as expected. I thought they were frisky against the Dolphins, but I mean, it was like watching a freaking hover car versus a Model T in this game, with the Patriots offense trying to keep up with the Dolphins offense, especially after Kendrick Bourne leaves the game. He's going to miss the season. I mean, that just sucks for the Patriots. He was like, they figured out, okay, he's our first read. He's the guy we can run this offense through. Now they got to go back to the drawing board and find someone else that can be that. So, just things continue to be difficult for the Patriots here. They're going to stay put at number 26. And then the Las Vegas Raiders are going to drop down a tier while maintaining that number 25 spot. Back-to-back weeks now getting ran all over, and the offense has really nothing going for them. We thought it might look better with Jimmy Garoppolo coming back against a Lions defense that kind of got carved up last week. No, not so much. Jimmy Garoppolo, horrible. Missing throws left and right, a brutal interception in the red zone. Really one of the worst games Jimmy's potentially ever played. It was rough to watch. So if he's not doing much for this offense, you got Devontae Adams getting upset because he's screaming open down the field and Jimmy Garoppolo can't even hit him. This team is in for a long run. Everyone go watch my Raiders rebuild on TFG Plays. Link in the description below. We just started that up a couple of days ago. Before we get to our NFL middle class tier, while we're plugging things, I do want to tell you guys about the sponsor for these weekly power rankings, Underdog Fantasy. Underdog's Pick'em contest is the number one way to increase your interest in any given crappy football game. We've got a lot of them this year that I know you're all sitting there watching, and I bet you wish you had a little bit more stakes on the game. So with Underdog, you can set your lineups selecting higher or lower on player stats, anything from passing yards to fantasy points. You can be that guy and pick a quarterback to throw an interception. It really is the best way to increase your interest in any game. And if you hit on all 5 of your selections, you can get up to 20 times your entry. You can buy insurance, so you only have to get 4 out of 5. I swear by Underdog Fantasy. I know you guys are going to love it. So right now, if you sign up using promo code TFG over at Underdog Fantasy, they will match up to $100 on your first deposit. That is easily a season's worth of these pick'em slips. And good luck. Thank you for supporting the channel with promo code TFG. All right, let's get to the NFL middle class. This really, I think, was the hardest group for me to rank. I kept shuffling these guys around. I was like, if they played on a neutral site this week, who would I be picking? I did my best. I think you can pretty much flip a coin with most of these teams. I mean, that's the point of these tiers, but it really feels that way with the middle class. Just kind of inconsistent teams, too, that you just don't necessarily know what you're going to get every week. And that's going to start with the Tampa Bay Bucks, who I continue to be impressed by their defense. but offensively, they have hit a lull. They've lost 4 straight. Baker Mayfield dropping his head against the blitz. He's missing throws. He just, he's had a nice little mini resurgence here with an offseason with the team that believes in him and kind of some continuity with the offense, but he still just is one of the 3 to 5 worst starters in the league. I don't know if they're going to hand the keys over to Kyle Trask. I've just never seen much upside there with Kyle Trask, but it definitely feels like he is a bench-worthy candidate right now. And, if they can't score over 20 points most weeks, it's just going to be a real challenge for their defense. So the Bucs continue to drop. And then we got the Tennessee Titans. Boy, can Will Levis sling it, man. Everybody make sure you're subscribed. I'm going to be doing a film breakdown on Will Levis here in the next 36 hours or so. They play on Thursday Night Football, so it's time sensitive to get that thing up, talk about how he played in his rookie debut. But I was a big Levis guy, so super fun to see him coming out and playing like that, unlocking DeAndre Hopkins too, and it definitely sparks some life into the Titans season. Maybe not for like this big playoff run or anything like that, but we know this defense can play. And if the offense can at least create some explosive plays, and they still have the base of the run game with Derrick Henry and Tyjae Spears, who's done some good things this year, no one's going to look forward to playing the Titans team, and maybe they can go on a run and scrap out a 7 seed or something. And they definitely have a lot of potential to see a big boost this week. But it's going to be a whole different test against a Steelers pass rush. And I just don't want to overreact to 1 week of new information with their offense looking like this when it hasn't been this way all season long. But then we have the Denver Broncos jumping up a tier here, picking up another win. And they're just climbing up towards adequacy, I would say, really on both sides of the ball. I mean, they've made some really good adjustments on defense. Credit to Vance Joseph, who I know Broncos fans probably still want gone, but hey, he's made some really nice kind of lineup adjustments with the cornerbacks and getting some of these edge guys in there, moving on from a Frank Clark, like this kind of stuff. They've reshaped this defense, and it's much more just like league average right now. Obviously, played a great game against the Kansas City Chiefs, and then offensively, they've found something with these backs. Javonte Williams getting more and more acclimated with the offense. Russ as well, more and more comfortable within Sean Payton's scheme. And this was the first week, too, where it felt like they actually had good wide receivers, Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton, who couldn't help himself but push off a couple times in this game. Still think they should call offensive pass interference more in the NFL. But anyway, Broncos obviously a really good week. If another team like the Titans, where if they keep playing like they did last week, they could really shoot up quickly, kind of turning their season around rather quickly in the middle of things here. Then we have the Houston Texans, who lose to the Carolina Panthers. Definitely not ideal to see this offense really just not come up with a lot of answers against a Panthers offense that's looked so bad this year. And it's not like there was really any individual performances that were overly bad for the Texans. They were just a little bit off. So, you hope that Bobby Slowick can kind of get these guys back in sync here. But man, the defense was great. The pass rush, the stunts. I thought the guys in the secondary were in good position. So, I'm not too worried about the Texans. They're just kind of working through the season. They're going to win some. They're going to lose some. But they are going to drop down 3 this week with the loss. Then we have the Indianapolis Colts, who stay at 20 again here. They are really competitive. And Gardner Minshew 2 weeks in a row has kind of bounced back, especially this week. He had a bad interception late in this game, but other than that, I mean, he really was running this offense. It was just those Colts corners that really did not match up well against Olave and especially Raheed Shaheed, like Michael Thomas. It was a tough matchup for the Colts, but they're well coached, man. They play physical up front. There's playmakers here. I mean, Josh Downs, Alec Pierce, Jonathan Taylor finally got unleashed this week. They're not an easy out. 20 just feels like a good spot for them. Then the Atlanta Falcons losing to the Titans, and Desmond Ridder coming out of the game. We'll see if they go with Heineke moving forward. I've been kind of calling for that for a while. If Desmond Ridder's not going to protect the football, which he has been, I think, the worst quarterback in the NFL in terms of turnover-worthy plays, why not go with Taylor Heineke, who sees the deep ball better, is more aggressive to push the ball to guys like Kyle Pitts and Drake London? And it's just more instinctive in terms of making plays on third down. Like I don't see him being a downgrade from Desmond Ridder. I'm curious to see how this goes. But obviously with a Taylor Heineke, you're going to have your limits no matter how many fun playmakers you have and how intense this defense has played this year. Our next team, the Washington Commanders, know all about what your ceiling can be with a Taylor Heineke. And the Commanders are going to jump up 4 this week, despite losing to the Philadelphia Eagles, but very good this week offensively. Sam Howell was slinging it, man, like 400 yards, a bunch of touchdowns, and he made a couple mistakes, but for the most part, I thought Howell looked really good. I thought this was his best game in terms of just letting it rip, getting these playmakers involved. And if they're able to push the ball like that, and they got Jahan Dotson going this week too, which is like, there he is. There's your talented first round year 2 player that can really open up the ceiling for this offense. Like, that's really encouraging to see. We know this defense is probably going to have better weeks ahead when they're not playing the Philadelphia Eagles. I still don't know why they continue to put Emmanuel Forbes on A.J. Brown. Like, Forbes already got benched. If you're going to put him in this game, go put him on the 175-pound Devonta Smith, not A.J. Brown, who has like 60 pounds on Emmanuel Forbes. It was just a really frustrating coaching decision. They had another coverage bust, which feels like those creep up for Washington more than they should. So they definitely still had some frustrating moments here, but the overall thing is I think Sam Howell just continues to trend up within this offense. And then I am going to drop the LA Rams into the middle class. I didn't feel great about this. I could easily see them changing my mind this week against the Green Bay Packers. But, Matthew Stafford dealing with a thumb injury, they need him to be a top 5 quarterback as he was for the first maybe 5 weeks of the season for them to be more of a playoff competitive team. When he's making mistakes and their offense isn't humming, you start to feel some of the deficiencies on the defense and some of the holes on the offense a little bit more. So I still think are going to be a frisky team, but they do feel like a cut below the teams in our next tier at this point in time. And that is going to start with the New Orleans Saints, who really impressed me this week. Definitely Derek Carr's best week, kind of not just running the offense, but helping the offense thrive, pushing the ball downfield. They've seemed to have actually kind of figured out the identity of what this offense is going to be, which is huge because we know this defense is really good, or at least most weeks it's going to be really good. But they've kind of said, all right, we've got the Taysom Hill run game thing, which is really hard for teams to stop. That gives us a nice floor. We've got 3 backs now healthy. Kamara looked great. You got Jamal Williams, and Kendre Miller has shown some flashes. So that's kind of their early down manufactured offense. But when they get to third down this week, they finally admitted, hey, this Raheed Shaheed dude is a freaking superstar. Let's launch the ball to him down the field. And sometimes he's screaming wide open and he's catching these beautiful, fingertip grabs, taking them to the house. Sometimes he's mossing defenders. Like, he is a legit high-end deep threat in the NFL. You pair that with Olave and Michael Thomas. They have found a way, it seems, to open up this offense. And they were much better last week against the Jags, too. So that's been impressive to me. And then, I mentioned the defense. Like, I think we feel pretty good about this being, any given week, the 8th to 15th best defense. They're very solid there under Dennis Allen. And then, speaking of good defenses, the Pittsburgh Steelers had a very Pittsburgh Steelers game here. Kenny Pickett leaves the game right before half, and at that point on, it was a Mitch Trubisky game. And it's just tough for them to run this offense. Matt Canada is not a guy that's going to come out and, scheme stuff up for Trubisky. And they just felt it in the second half. But they're still competitive. We know this defense is going to do their thing, and they did again against the Jags, forcing a couple turnovers, kept them in the game. I don't feel different about the Steelers this week as I have, the last couple of weeks. Then we've got the New York Jets, who salvaged really their season with a win against the Giants. That's a game that they could not afford to lose in the AFC. Some aspects of the game impressed me. Like, those were horrible conditions. They lose their center at a point in this game where it's to the point that they couldn't even run under center plays. Zach Wilson, I think, continues to look like Zach Wilson, where he's not the best quarterback in the world, but he can avoid mistakes and do enough to get the ball to Garrett Wilson. I love the clutch factor at the end of that game, like showing a little bit of it factor. This defense balled out. Like, this is kind of their formula, right, is winning these games 17-13, but they've kind of got it down a little bit. I don't know. It was such a weird game to take too much away from. But huge for them to get a win, and hopefully they can figure out their center situation moving forward. But they are going to drop down one as the LA Chargers looked they played their best game of the season this week, granted against Tyson Bagent and the Bears, so I don't want to take too much from it. But, yeah, Herbert looked great. They finally decide to get Quentin Johnston going on, crossing routes, and, the first time they do, he breaks 2 tackles, picks up a first down. It's like, hello, why'd you draft the guy if you weren't going to throw him crossing routes? Because that's one of the only things he did at TCU, and he was amazing at it. So really big to get him going. They've also gotten some back shoulders going with him. I don't want to overreact to the defense for doing what they did against Tyson Bagent, but obviously we have high expectations for that offense. They delivered, and they're going to go up a couple spots here. But then we've got our next tier, which this week I'm going to call it the Super Bowl Dreamers. It's all pretty much the same, basically teams that should be in the playoffs that I certainly wouldn't bet on to go to the Super Bowl, but maybe have deep playoff run potential. And I'm still going to keep the Cleveland Browns in this tier, though I'm getting less and less confident in that. To be fair, they were super competitive against the Seahawks, and if a ball doesn't ricochet off of Jamal Adams' helmet for an interception late in this game, they might have still won. But the offense just needs to be better and more consistent, and as bad as Deshaun Watson has been, I don't think he's going to be as bad as P.J. Walker has been, and that's just a weird situation, right? Is Deshaun Watson coming back sometime soon? It sounds like yes. I don't know. The Browns are one of the more frustrating teams to know what to do with because the talent is incredible. Case in point, the fact that they still almost beat the Seahawks. But I am going to bump the Seahawks up a tier this week, giving them their respect, beating the Browns. Geno played 2.5 amazing quarters of football in this game. Honestly, he came out the gate on a mission, was super impressive. Some of the throws, some of the play extension he made, some of his best football in the season in this game against a really good Browns defense. And that's really encouraging to see. But also just defensively, they're showing more and more things. I do think Jamal Adams has made an impact on this defense. You've got the breakout of Devon Witherspoon, Boye Mafe playing better. They just acquired Leonard Williams too. So, feeling much better about this defense week in, week out. I would say I like the Leonard Williams trade. I don't love it. He is an expensive veteran for a second round pick that is he going to set this defense over the edge? Like I said, I like the trade. I don't love it. But I am feeling much better about the Seahawks lately, mainly because I'm feeling more and more confident that this is at least a league average defense as opposed to more of a bottom 12 squishy defense that I maybe thought they might have been coming into the year. So big week for Seattle. Loving the throwback jerseys. Maybe not every week, but it's a great aesthetic. Then we get the Jacksonville Jaguars. Jags fans are not going to like that they're losing a spot here. It is of no fault of their own. You'll see kind of why here in a little bit. They kind of, to me, feel like the same team every week. And I know that sounds lazy to say that, but it really is okay, Trevor's going to come out. He's going to make a bunch of really good throws. He's going to have some good play extension. You're going to have 5 or so really frustrating moments from this offense, whether it's a fumble or messing up a gimmick play. This week it was running a pop pass to Evan Ingram where he fumbles down in the red zone. You might get a questionable Trevor Lawrence throw in there once or twice a week. Just a brutal Trevor Lawrence interception in the red zone this week in an otherwise pretty good game. You might get some miscommunications and some drops from Calvin Ridley. The offense does their thing. They're a really good offense, but they have their frustrations. I will say the defense deserves some credit. They're playing really well. The secondary's been awesome. This week, even without Tyson Campbell, the rest of these guys stepped up. So, Devin Lloyd playing great for that defense too. So I like the Jags. I think they're a very good football team. Never going to be an easy out, and they can beat anybody. But there is another team that's going to be passing them up in the standings this week, or in the power rankings at least. And then we have the Detroit Lions at number 9, who also are going to get passed up here by the team we keep alluding to. I'll keep waiting to reveal who that is if you don't know who it is going to be already. But, the Lions, I think, definitely took care of business. I expected them to bounce back against the Ravens. That's why we didn't really drop them last week. Just a tough week in Baltimore there, but coming out, dominating the line of scrimmage, showing that tenacity, the good coaching, all of it that we know Detroit brings to the table. That kneecap-biting mentality was on full display. I don't love that Jared Goff didn't have the best night. Really brutal interception, goes for a pick six. Big missed throw on a drag that he hasn't really been missing this year. But I think he'll have better games ahead. And how about Jahmyr Gibbs, the breakout game? I said when they drafted him, he's going to have to play like an elite running back for him to return value on that number 12 pick, and looked pretty elite on Monday Night Football. So if he can keep those types of performances up, I might have some apologizing to do even about the Jahmyr Gibbs pick. We'll see. But yeah, I don't really feel any different about Detroit this week. Just as I really didn't after the Ravens game, expected them to beat the snot out of the Raiders, and they did. Tip of the cap to them. Let's move on to our number 8 team, the Buffalo Bills. They take down the Tampa Bay Bucks. I just wish Josh Allen could play like that every week, where he's kind of dialed in and he's using his easy outlets, getting Dalton Kincaid involved, a quicker time to throw, break out the big, Superman plays when they need you to do that, not necessarily all 60 minutes. Really just a dominant Josh Allen night on Thursday night, in my opinion. And that's the thing, though, with all these injuries on their defense, they're going to need that for a 4-week playoff stretch if they're going to be a team that proves out to be a tier 1 team. And do we trust Josh Allen to basically be a perfect quarterback and put this team on his back in a playoff run? I don't know if I trust that. So they're going to kind of be the tip of this tier 2. And then tier 1, as I alluded to in the opening of the show, has really opened up this week. I think we've got some teams playing really good football climbing into this tier, and some of the teams that I viewed as tier 1 teams have struggled a little bit this week and in recent weeks. And the biggest of them is obviously the San Francisco 49ers. Now, I do think if and when they get Trent Williams and Deebo Samuel back, they'll be much closer to that number 1 ranked team that I had them for the first 5 or 6 weeks of the season. But you're starting to see some more human aspects from both Brock Purdy and especially this defense. It does feel like, as they've gone against some much better offenses, it definitely feels like they missed DeMeco Ryans a little bit. It just doesn't feel like the stunts and the scheming up front is quite as scary. How much do they also miss guys like Charles Omenihu, Samson Ebukam? Could be we slept on those departures. Javon Hargrave hasn't quite been that game-wrecking defensive tackle for them. So the defense is still obviously very good, but without an elite pass rush, which I don't think they've really had, you're starting to feel some issues in the secondary pop up a little bit more. So they're more human defensively. They're having to put a lot more on Brock Purdy's plate, and as good as Brock Purdy's been, that's not the way you want to do this. You want him to be kind of one of the, just, I don't want to say worst players on the team, but you want him to basically have to do the least and raise him up, not have him raise up other pieces of the team. So they've got to find some answers here. They got to get some guys healthy, but I still think they are a team that belongs in this top tier based on the fact that they felt like in a tier of their own for the first 6 weeks of the season. And I think it's an okay time to hit a little bit of a road bump, because you can still get healthy and find some answers and get hot and healthy into December here. So I'm not too worried about the Niners, but they definitely have to drop down. And then we've got the team that I keep alluding to seeing a massive spike this week, the Cincinnati Bengals. Call me biased or attaching to my priors or whatever. I had the Bengals as my Super Bowl pick coming into the year, ranked number 2 to start the season. But this is the team that I was hoping to see out the gate. And it's easy to do this when there's the single factor of Joe Burrow's injury coming off the bye week this week, and there's the, number 2 best quarterback in the NFL again, Joe Burrow. He was incredible against the Niners. picking them apart, but also the play extension, the scrambling ability, not just creating plays when there's nothing there. But I think he gets a little bit of a confidence boost to have that as a crutch. He plays better in structure, knowing that, okay, if it's not there, I can create. And I think it's just reopened up the whole offense. Not to mention T. Higgins, back healthy. Joe Mixon looked really fast this week, unlike the first month of the year. I can't really explain that, but the run game was much better here. And then another big underrated reason why I was so high on the Bengals coming into the year was Lou Anarumo and this defense. And they just have so many underrated stars. You get a beautiful interception from Logan Wilson this week. I mean, Trey Hendrickson continues to dominate. You got DJ Reader, Awuzie. Like, they really are an underrated defense with one of the best defensive minds in the NFL calling the shots on that side with Lou Anarumo. So I do think the Bengals are back, if not all the way back. And just a absolute statement win against the 49ers. Welcome back, Bengals fans. It's good to have you. Then we got the Cowboys also going to climb up into this top tier this week. I know they've had some ugly losses, but God, this team can just boat race people. And the talent on this team is so exceptional. Their ability to just dominate a game defensively with their front. And, Dak is playing really good football. Outside of that Niners game, Dak has really been good this season. So I think they belong. I really do. I know they've had some ugly losses, and you're afraid that any given week they might kind of not have their game script and struggle to adjust. Like, I get that about them. But they're so good at forcing that game script where they can pin their ears back with this pass rush, and Dak can control this offense that I think they belong. And then the Baltimore Ravens as well. They actually didn't have the best week. They, to me, felt like they kind of coasted against the Cardinals. They knew that they were going to win, and I don't think they broke out a lot of stops offensively and just kind of leaned on the run game and the defense and just kind of a whatever week. But obviously what they did against Detroit and the fact that their two losses were very fluky, weird games where they shot themselves in the foot but kind of outplayed the opponent in terms of total yardage and that kind of thing. This team, again, like the Cowboys, I do think they belong, especially when you got the Chiefs losing to Denver. You got the Niners dropping their third straight. I really think this top tier has opened up quite a bit this week. And then we got the Miami Dolphins at number 3, just taking care of business against the New England Patriots. Tyreek Hill is just so insane. And then also, how about getting Jalen Ramsey back? I think that's huge. In their 2 losses, the defense has really struggled, really. And getting a guy like that back who shows, great athleticism and IQ on a great interception on Mac Jones, playing in the zone of this Fangio defense, his presence, it's only going to, I think, elevate this defense as we move forward here. So I definitely like seeing that. Should be getting A-Chain back pretty soon, I would think, too. That's a big one as well. He's been a superstar back for them. Feeling pretty good about the Dolphins right now, too. And then the Kansas City Chiefs, they are going to go down. They're going to lose their number 1 spot. I think that's justified after losing to Russell Wilson and the Broncos. But I'm not too worried about that game. The Chiefs have done this for like 3 years. And believe me, I know as someone that's done these power rankings, they have these games where Mahomes feels like he kind of just regresses back to the guy that just wants to kind of sling it. They were, I think, looking ahead a little bit to the upcoming weeks. They got to go to Germany against the Dolphins and then play the Eagles the week after that. So this is going to sort itself out these next couple weeks. But, watching this Broncos game, it's like, what happened to all the quick-hitting short pass stuff that's made this offense so tough to defend? It was gone. They just kind of were messing around, playing with their food a little bit against the Broncos, and they got caught. They had 3 turnovers in this game, 2 by Mahomes, a fumbled punt by Mecole Hardman, a sloppy trap game loss, in my opinion. They deserve to lose the top spot. But could I see them beating Miami and Philadelphia and taking that spot back in a couple weeks? Absolutely. So I'm not worried about the Chiefs, but come on now, you got to play better than they did on Sunday. But then we are going to have the 1-7 win team at number 1, the Philadelphia Eagles. I do think they are the most foolproof team. They can run the ball, they can throw the ball, and have A.J. Brown, who it's tough to say he's the best wide receiver in the NFL because you got Tyreek Hill in existence and Justin Jefferson's still a thing. But my God, the level of receiver play we're seeing from A.J. Brown right now, it's up there. It really is sensational. His ability to just come down with all of these catches and the one-handed catch touchdown this week, like, come on, the dude's ridiculous. Hurts did a great job taking care of the football. They just kept coming. They did have a couple of red zone turnovers. They fumble a tush push. They have Kenneth Gainwell fumbles. I think that game would have been a little bit more out of hand for Washington if the Eagles convert those like they normally would. I guess if you want to poke some holes in the Eagles, like, their coverage unit is just fine right now. Hopefully, getting Byard acclimated with this new system within the upcoming weeks can help there. But that's, pretty nitpicky. The Eagles are freaking awesome and belong at number 1. I'd be stunned if anybody doesn't have them 1 this week. So I hope you guys enjoyed the Week 9 Power Rankings. I do want to remind you to come back here today at 6 o'clock Eastern for my live show with Matthew Caller. We're going to be talking most overrated and underrated players in the NFL, among some other topics. We do that every Tuesday here at 5 o'clock. So we'll see you guys there. Thank you for watching. Let me know in the comments down below where I was right, where I was wrong, and we'll see you later. Peace out.